I am concerned for the live-action Zelda movie. Not for the story, that can definitely be good, but for the sheer fact that it's a live-action Zelda movie. If that phrase doesn't scare you as a connoisseur of fantasy movies, you haven't been paying attention. There are some fantasies that are just more rational in live action than others. To compare, Lord of the Rings is a realistic humanoids doing mostly realistic things. While it took the invention of computer animation to allow them to bring the monsters to life, it's still a very realistic fantasy where victory is won by directing armies and climbing mountains. And even there, many elements, most notably Samwise the Strong and Tom Bombadil, had to be removed to not feel, well, silly. To compare, in Zelda, only the Hylians and Gerudo are even humanoid. There is no getting around that the Zora, Rito, Koroks, Gorons, fairies, and every monstrous enemy would have to be fully computer animated. This cosplay I'm showing is more or less the best case scenario for an actual actor. And while it's impressive in stills, it would look absurd in a realistic setting. When so much of your world is animated, you have to question whether it's even reasonable to bother with live action. Now, while I was tempted to make comparisons to Disney live action remakes, the best movie to compare this to is actually the Warcraft movie. So little of that movie was actually live actors, and what was real was extremely stylized to match the art style they had already established. I mean, look at those swords. They are absolutely ginormous. They'd weigh more than most pole arms. That armor looks absurd to be unmeasurably heavy. But it does look right next to the orcs, who are the real stars of the movie. Most notably, Grona Half-Orcan was saved by a great performance, but her appearance made absolutely no sense. She looked more like Elphaba than anyone else, and while she works with the humans, she just looks out of place among the orcs. This sort of clash between reality and the art style they were going for is the last thing we want to see in Zelda. So, if we're going to have to either sacrifice realism to keep the art, or keep the art and sacrifice realism, I know which one I'd pick. Secondly, if Zelda is going for a PG rating, they're going to have a hard time having Link do anything in live action. Now, I'm not advocating for something like the '89 cartoon, where Link wasn't allowed to actually hit anyone with a sword, and had to use Fi's beams to actually harm people. However, let's be honest, he has an arming sword. Link's entire purpose is to mess up people who try to get to Zelda or the Triforce. You can get away with a lot more cartoonish violence than you can in live action. A slash that would realistically cleave a bokoblin in half can get away with knocking it against a wall in animation, but that would look absurd in a more realistic setting. Similarly, most bosses dwarf Link to a preposterous degree. You aren't going to get in a situation where live-action Link can believably take down Hinox, much less something like Molduga, without either getting into Galadriel Vitrol nonsense or extremely realistic Achilles tendon slicing. Now, I've been wrong before. Detective Pikachu and Sonic were both shockingly good photorealistic cartoon action. And Lord of the Rings and Warcraft has shown real actors in intense sword fights with monsters. But I'm concerned about them making it work. Thirdly, live action means we're gonna have to say goodbye to Patricia Summerset. After 3 games, in each of which she gave a better performance than the last, Wild Zelda has become the de facto way that I read any and all of the Zelda's speech bubbles. Well, aside from Tetra, who will always be voiced by Keira Knightley in my mind. However, Somerset's 42 now, and while she could theoretically star as Queen Zelda the Elder, making this the first Zelda whose mother isn't dead, There's no way she can be a teenage princess on camera. This is going to be a serious blow to this movie, as they had a solid casting who's now no longer available, but will be hanging over their heads as a comparison. And so that's why I'm not sold on live action Zelda. I dearly wish this to be good, whether they adapt one of the games or go with an entirely original story. However, by going live action, I have to question a lot of the wisdom of their choices. If I really need a live action Zelda, I'll just watch Magic Flute again. No, really. That happened, was an opera, and was shockingly good. It's on YouTube. There's a tag somewhere on screen. Go watch it. Now, to be clear, I'm not dismissing the Zelda movie. If there is true passion behind this project, it can succeed. With all the criticism I gave Warcraft, you can tell the love they poured into every scene of that movie. And that made it work despite all the shortcomings of the script. However, Nintendo and Sony are starting on the wrong foot by adding realism rather than letting the recognizable art style shine. And they are actively hindering their ability to include the needed action, as well as losing their leading lady in the process. Thanks for listening.